What are some of the key trends that cyber practitioners should be focusing on in the first half of 2022? CyberCube's recently published report, our Global Threat Briefing, aims to identify some of those trends. I'm Yvette Essen, Head of Content and Communications for CyberCube. Joining me in studio is Darren Thomson. Darren is Head of Cybersecurity Strategy for CyberCube. Darren, can you give me a quick overview of what the Global Threat Briefing is?
Yeah, certainly, Yvette. It's lovely to be here with you. So we decided a few years ago that we needed to provide kind of 6 monthly views of the threat landscape, both actors that are acting in that landscape as well as victims and indeed the threats that those victims encounter. So for 6 months of the year, we gather information from various places, including the data sources that we use in our products, as well as through desktop research and threat intelligence. And we really correlate all of the data that we've accumulated over that 6 month period. And in the July timeframe and in the January timeframe of each year, we publish a report, and that is the Global Threat Briefing.
Now, there is a lot of information in that Global Threat Briefing, but perhaps you could summarise some of the key highlights there.
Yeah, highlights, first of all, kind of looking back over the last 6 months have included some really interesting dynamics in the threat actor landscape. First of all, as far as nation states are concerned, we're seeing a very dynamic environment when it comes to countries and governments getting themselves involved in cyber. And then on the sort of private side, if you like, amongst cyber criminals, we're seeing lots and lots of activity and uptick in things like ransomware where it comes to cyber criminal activity. In the threat landscape itself, we're seeing a continuing evolving of the ransomware malware type. And we're also seeing other trends as well, and sometimes some re-emergencies of attacks that perhaps we've seen in years gone by, such as distributed denial of service attacks.
Now, you mentioned threat actors there. Can you embellish there on some of the findings of the report?
Yeah, well, we concern ourselves greatly at this point in cyber history, if you like, with what we call APTs. Advanced Persistent Threat Actors. These are actors that are very well funded, very well resourced, and frankly, once they've set themselves an objective, can stay on that objective until they reach it almost indefinitely. Very often an APT is linked to a nation state, and when it comes to nation states, we're seeing more and more nation states start to weave a cyber competence and a cyber agenda into their national security agenda. A few years ago, that really only would have been true of a handful of countries. Now, far more countries we're seeing move in that direction. So that's an important dynamic that we need to keep in mind. Very often, the attacks that we see propagated from governments are reconnaissance exercises, essentially, the stealing of data. And so, from an insurance perspective, one might kind of assume then the impact won't be that large. The problem really, though, is collateral damage. We see private enterprises affected by some of these reconnaissance and government-style attacks. So that's a really important dynamic. On the criminal side of the threat actor landscape, ransomware continues to be the preferred method to extract financial attributes from targets. And we've seen over the last sort of year or so this emergence of ransomware as a service. So now off-the-shelf ransomware code, very sophisticated code being made available to very many more criminals, meaning we just see a huge proliferation of ransomware attacks.
In terms of our predictions for the report, can you highlight some of the predictions that you think cyber practitioners should be focusing on?
Yeah, well, first of all, ransomware needs to be included here. I have heard people talking about ransomware is just another trend. It's something that's likely to come and to go, like other technical trends that we sometimes see. We fundamentally disagree with that. Ransomware is here to stay. We'll certainly see further evolution of ransomware. Just in the past couple of years, for example, we've seen ransomware code move from simply encrypting data to keep that data hostage to a situation where data is also extracted and that mirrored data, if you like, held to ransom. That's a great example of the evolution of ransomware that we're seeing. Now we're seeing ransomware as a service. Again, many more actors able to leverage very sophisticated ransomware code. We expect the evolution of ransomware to continue. We also would expect certain vertical markets to see attacks to quite a great extent. So healthcare being a great example, coming out of the other end of the pandemic, it's been made very apparent to cyber criminals that recipes, vaccine recipes, for example, are a great source, a great target, if you like, in terms of intellectual property. So healthcare is definitely under attack, and we do see, in many cases, a lack of security maturity in that vertical market. And so we would definitely expect to see attacks in that area, and for healthcare organisations and for those that insure healthcare organisations should definitely have that in mind.
Darren, thank you very much for providing such a high-level summary of that report. Now, the report Global Threat Briefing can be found on our website, which is www.cybercube.com. For CyberCube, I'm Yvette Essen.